One of the other important tools when it comes to the 3D aspect is going to be this one right here, which is your revolve tool. And that's where you take the cone that we've been designing. So this is for version 2 of our agitator that we haven't finished working on, but we want to do for the off season. But this was made with something called the revolve tool. So if you were to take this part and just cut it in half, you would have a nice shape that's an arc with a few things on the inside. And that's basically how this was designed, right? This was designed by drawing a flat shape and then spinning it around in an axis to make an object. So we're going to just kind of cover that real quick so you can see what it looks like. I'm going to make a new part, which is something I should have covered earlier. I'm going to roll back for a second. Right now we're in a part studio, right? We're designing a part. What happens if we want to make a second part? You saw when we looked at the full robot, on that bottom there was dozens of files over here, right? The whole thing was covered with folders and files. Those are all different parts and different assemblies. We'll get into assemblies next time, but assemblies are basically collections of parts that you stick together in specific ways. However, we want to make a new part. I don't want to just throw it on here because it's going to get cluttered and messy and they don't need to exist in the same place. I need to make a new part. If you look down in the bottom left, you have your Part Studio 1, that's where we're working. I want to add a new one. There's a plus button next to it. If I click on it, I have the option to create a new Part Studio. Now I have Part Studio 2, which is going to be just like when we started Part Studio 1. It's a blank file with your 3D viewer, and everything's nice and clean. We're going to make our second part in here. And we're going to do that. We're going to make, obviously, a much simpler version, but we're going to make a cone. Right? We're going to make something very similar to this so that you can see what it looks like. And I'm going to start the same way I did the last time. I'm going to make a sketch on the front plane. And I want to draw a cone, and I want it to look, like a cone. So what I'm going to do, my first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a construction line and define how tall I want this to be, right? I'm going to lay out the size of my stuff. So I'm going to make a line, and this line is going to serve as our axis when we get to actually revolving the cone. And that's why it's important, because we're saying this is going to be the center of the cone. Everything's going to be the exact same distance from this line, no matter where you measure on the cone. So I'm going to create this line, and I'm going to define it. We're going to say the cone is going to be 5 inches tall. Let me zoom out so you can see it. So that's going to be the center line of the cone. It's going to be that tall, and it's going to be centered around that point. Now, as far as what I want the cone to look like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from the top, right? So if we look at the cone as if you're just looking at it from the side, it's got an arc that starts at the top, goes all the way down to the bottom, and then goes in. So that's the general shape that I want to create. So starting from the top, I'm not going to make anything round, any angles yet. I'm just going to draw it as a box. So using my line tool from the top, I'm just going to go out a little bit, and then I'm going to go down a little bit, a little bit. I'm going to go all the way to the bottom. And if you look, when I get close to the bottom, the origin point lights up orange, and I get a little dotted line. That's one of those automatic relations that's trying to add. That's just going to make sure that they both wind up being the same level, right? They're both going to be the same height. And it's just one less thing that I have to worry about adding. So if I click, it's going to automatically lock it in on that line. So now I've done my little bit that goes out, I've done the bit that goes down, and now I need to come back in. And if you look at the bottom, it doesn't go in all the way, it only goes in a little bit. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to come in a little bit along that line, and you'll see it's still got all the orange stuff and tells me it's going to keep it horizontal. So I'm going to keep that so that I don't have to do it later. And then I'm just going to come back up. Looking at the inside, it goes back up to the top. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to just come back up to the top and click on it. Well, I just haven't angled it. I haven't put any lines on it yet. Yeah, I haven't measured anything yet. I'm just drawing a rough shape, and then I'm going to go add my numbers. So now that I have a rough shape of what I want it to look like, I need to make it look not insane, because right now it looks crazy. So I want it to be, I'm making up numbers here, right, because we don't have actual numbers for this thing. I want the top and the bottom to be the same thickness. So in order to do that, I'm going to use the tool we used before, that equal relation, to make sure the top line and the bottom line stay the same. So if I change one, the other one's going to change with it. So I'm going to go find up in the top. You might have your drop down here. Mine's all spread out. So I'm going to do the equal tool. And I'm just going to say the top and the bottom are going to be the same. Yep. So you'll see now I can just move it around. And it's doing all sorts of weird things because I haven't finished telling it where things go. Right? But the top and bottom always stay exactly the same. Now I need to tell it how thick I want it to be. And again, since we're just kind of picking numbers, I can pick whatever, but that looks like it's about 1/2 inch. So I'm going to make it 1/2 inch thick. So if I come over to my dimension tool, and I select one of the lines that we made equal, because I said they're going to be the same, I want this to be 1/2 inch thick, so I'm going to do 0.5, I'm going to make it 1/2 inch. And it shrinks both of them because I told them they need to be the same. All right, we're working in radius, not diameter. So right now we're 1.5 inches from the center point to the outside part, which means our radius is 1.5 inches, technically 2 inches to the outside part because we have 1/2 inch part. So when we revolve this, when we make it the full part, the full thing is going to be 4 inches in diameter because it's 2 inches in radius. So from here, for simplicity, I'm going to say this part's done. Right? This is what the side profile is going to look like, and now we're going to sweep it all, or revolve it around to make it a full cone. So I'm going to close this sketch, and then I'm going to go over here into the revolve tool. It's going to be right next to the extrude tool. And when I click on it, this is going to be basically identical to the extrude tool in that it's going to let you do a solid, a surface, or a thin. We're almost always going to be doing solids. And then you get to choose if you want a new part, add to an existing part, remove it, or do an intersection. Since we don't have anything yet, this is going to be a new part because we have to create the thing. And what it wants is it wants to know what part we're going to revolve, right? And that's what part we're going to be spinning around. And that's going to be the side profile we just created. So I'm going to select that. And then after I select that, I need to tell it what we're revolving around. And that's that first line we did in the beginning, that center point that we set the height on. That's what's called our axis, right? The axis is the point in the center of your part that everything's relative to. So I'm also going to make sure I click on Revolve Axis so that it's selected, and then I'm going to pick the line that we drew to say that's the axis. So now I've selected everything. I've selected the face that's going to be the profile that we sweep around the circle, and I've selected the axis, which is the center point of the circle. If I click the check mark and this thing works properly, which I'm worried it won't because it's still red, if it works properly, it's going to create a cone. Okay, so we're going to need to change the sketch because apparently OnShape doesn't like it when you revolve around a point that's part of the shape. So what we're going to do is we're going to change it a bit so that just like this one, it's got a hole in the middle of the cone. Because then hopefully it won't yell at me anymore. So in order to keep this simple, I'm going to come back up to this top point because I want to now take the top of the cone and move it over. So what I'm going to do is if I come and look at you see if I hover over these two relations, it highlights the ones that are the lines that are part of that relation. So I want to find the one that's got the axis and the point that it's connected to, because I'm going to delete that, which is definitely getting too complicated, but we got to clean it up a bit. So now that I'm just hovering over it, and then I'm going to slide up and find the two relations. I'm going to click on the one I want to get rid of, and then I'm just going to delete it. And you'll see my shape is now unconstrained, because I've deleted the thing that was making it defined. So I can take this and move it around now, and you see it just kind of dances. Well, the reason I did that is because I want to actually add a dimension between the origin and that point, so that we have a bit of a gap there. You good? Question or?
Which one did you? How did you know which one it was?
Yeah. So, yeah. Let me just show that again, because that is a weird one. So that was. So.
Right. So is it this one or this one? This one.
Yeah.
And we want to remove
the one that we want to get rid of, so it's just showing you, is since we want to move the line away from the axis, we want to find the one where the axis is one of the selected lines, and then the one of the other lines is selected, because that's the relation that's currently attaching it to the axis. So that's the one that we want to delete. We want to find the one where the axis and another line is highlighted. And then once we find that one, we just, once you find the one where the axis is highlighted, you're just going to, what are we doing here? We're going to click on it, and then we're going to delete it. You'll know if it works, because then you can grab it and just, all right, what did we do here? You can grab it and move it around. All right, yeah, you want to go see?
Let's make sure that this is fine.
Okay. Once we've deleted the relation and it's no longer defined, we can now move it away from the axis. So just because I know most people are going to see it. Okay. So I've deleted it. They're still touching. Now how do I make them move apart? The way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to create a dimension where one of the things I select is going to be the axis itself, and then the other thing is going to be probably that line, if it'll let me do it, but it won't. But I want to pick on the point. So right now it's at 0. That's going to be a whole thing. Before I add the dimension, the easiest way is just going to be grab the point and move it over. Because if you move it out of the way, then you have enough room to click on things. But I want to do a dimension between the axis and that point. And you see right now it's around 1/4 of an inch. That sounds pretty good, so I'm just going to make it a nice clean number of 0.25. So now I have a bit of a gap there. It's no longer touching. And the whole reason we're doing this is because OnShape is annoying and won't let you revolve a point that intersects with itself. So now that we've added a bit of an air gap there, or it'll just solve it itself. All right. So just to kind of recreate what we did, because it fixed itself when we did that. If we add a new revolve, we need to tell it two things. We need to tell it what shape we're revolving, and then what axis we're revolving it around. So the shape that we just created is what I'm going to select. It's going to be that diamond shape. And then for revolve axis, I'm going to click on that and select the first line that we made. And once you do that, it revolves around and makes it a cone. All right. So now that we've revolved the part, the last step would be what we were talking about before. We have to go around the corners out for safety for the most part. So we got a lot of points on this thing. So I clicked on that edge and you can see it added a rounding to it. If I want to go through and click on all of my edges, you can see it'll round that out. If I go down at the bottom and click on that edge, that one, it's rounding out all of my corners. Now, when it comes to 3D printing, since the bottom part is most likely what's going to be the face, I wouldn't actually want to round that out because then it's going to round these corners, which is going to print terribly. But for the purposes of seeing how this tool works, I want to round out everything. So I've selected all of the edges that I want rounded, and then you can see that they're rounding. Once you have them all selected, you just hit the green check mark and it'll save it all for you. And I now have a part with all rounded edges.